So we're sitting down to discuss Martin Luther King's life. I just want to understand your perspectives better on it, and I'm sure I will learn some new things from hearing what you people learned about him through the different things that we did with him. So let's start with, what were some important events from Martin Luther King's life?
Well, I thought it was really important that when he grew up, he always knew something was different between whites and blacks. He always felt different, but he always felt like he should be treated equally from whites, blacks, which was kind of weird because at that time that wasn't something that was thought of then. Like, it was always thought that blacks were less than whites.
I'm going to add to that. I actually thought it was really cool in the biography how they picked out specific moments from his life when he was in the shoe store and he was asked to go to the back and he wanted to play with his neighbors, but his neighbors' parents said, no, you guys can't play with each other. Like, I like that the biography picked out certain events so that we could understand what it meant to be discriminated. So I thought that was pretty neat.
I think it was really important, it was also from the biography, that they told us about the teacher that instilled in him that he needed to peacefully resist, because if he never would have had that lesson from the teacher, who knows if he ever would have became the civil rights leader that he became.
I think that it was interesting to talk about that is that when his teacher did that, and then when he went on to Crozer University, he studied Mahatma Gandhi, and that's what he studied, was about peacefully resisting. So I thought that made a really cool connection.
You know, one thing I wondered with, I know he had his, discriminated, because of his color, but I wonder how people treated him because he was 15 when he went to college. I mean, that's 3 to 4 years younger than, those other kids were. And yes, he may have been smart enough, but you think of that maturity thing. I mean, just look at our 4th graders. They're so much more mature than some 1st graders. So I wonder if they discriminated against him thinking he's just a little kid on campus. So
he probably had a really hard life, not only because of his color of his skin, but then because of that, he was always kind of ahead of the game compared to everybody else. So he probably had a really hard time growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he just had a lot of out there thoughts. Like, at that time, it was not a lot of African Americans would stand up for their rights and they would bring about change. And I know when Mrs. Collins talked about in the shoe store, I think that they wanted him to go to the back of the shoe store. It said in the biography that a lot of times his parents would choose to just leave. So I also think it's important to think that his parents probably were kind of ahead of the times too, if they were seeing that African Americans should be treated equally.
Well, on that note, let's go to character traits. I'd be curious, what did you think was the best character trait that you came up with for him? Because that was a really strong statement that you just said.
I think that he was really inspirational. I think he was a really inspirational leader. He had many important speeches where people just sat there and were stunned at the words that were coming out of his mouth, and it was so powerful. Like, when we watched The Primary Source, I remember thinking how powerful it was listening to his speech. I got goosebumps.
Yeah, and all those people that were watching him, I mean, he, like you said, inspired a lot of people, and I'm sure it was broadcast on TV too. So, and I remember just being surprised too that not only blacks were there, but also white people as well. So it kind of had this sense of unity too, of bringing people together. So I think that was a big inspiration too for everyone in the nation to see at that time.
I think another character trait that goes along with inspirational is that he was very determined, because even though he gave the speeches and all of that, he was then put in jail, and then he was he had many threats against him and all of those things that it would be so easy for him to just say, I'm done, and not be that inspirational leader for all those people. But he still kept fighting, so I think that's another, I think those two kind of go hand in hand.
Agreed.
I think of him as a role model, still to us today. Whenever things come out, the kids talk about it in the news, when it is still going on today, and I think we refer to him quite often as a role model and as a leader, for everyone to kind of look up to, even though this happened a long time ago.
Well, there's even a holiday named after him.
I know, I'd like a holiday named after me. So I heard you talk about The Primary Source, how we watched that video and we felt like we were right there. So how do you think The Primary Source and the Secondary Source really changed our thinking, about him?
Well, I like that from the secondary source, I got my facts that I didn't know about him. But then the primary source, I got to actually see his face and see how he truly felt about this whole situation and what was going on in the nation and how he was going to try and do something about it. So I got my facts from the secondary, so I got my background knowledge, but then when I saw the primary source, it all kind of made more sense. Like I could have put it all together when I saw it for real, I guess.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think the primary source does a really good job of showing or like letting me feel what they all felt. And even though I wasn't there, I just think that emotional piece in a secondary or in a primary source, is, I mean, you can't get that from a biography.
Agreed. And I think it's like you were saying, it's really important to get the background information so you know about what the March on Washington was. And then it was really cool that we got to see the March on Washington because it referred to his famous speech in his biography, and then we got to watch the speech, and that was super powerful to watch. And it was just really neat, and like you said, to see all those people and to see firsthand what was going on.
Yeah, it's one thing to read about it in like a book, and then it's one thing to actually see it from the actual event. Then it kind of makes more sense. And you can see how important it was and why we actually do study it then and read about it and still talk about it, even though it happened, like 40, 50 years ago.
One other thing that I think secondary sources offer where primary doesn't is that it goes through the different stages in his life. In the biography we read from childhood till he died and even after. So that's something we can't get from the primary, so I see the value in both.
And they both, the primary and the secondary source, really helped us know about this character a lot better. It really helped us learn about Martin Luther King Jr. We learned about different character traits. We learned about his life. Like, I just think they both were very powerful in our learning.
And I understand him so much better from hearing your different perspectives. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.